it's from
That's kind of nice.
or if it was through WSU.
This is tough.
Look at it, see where you are.
So,
Is the connection bad?
no, it's here. It's just
Okay.
navigating this and y'all.
Oh, that's like the whole teaching in the classroom.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna cancel the waiting room. Let everybody in.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more.
Wow.
Can someone online, can you hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Thank you. I've got the chat up, so if you have questions, if you can't hear me, I'll navigate back and forth. Okay. So for roster POA, I put together a little, and I can make copies of this, but it's also dropped into the Google folder. For tips and links, this goes through if you're getting started, if it's your first time navigating FFA roster, what are some tips and how to navigate that? How do you get activated if you're a new advisor, if you're moving schools? Those are all questions that would come to me. If you're new to FFA roster, then I need to know where your chapter's at, what your email is. If you were an FFA member prior, this would be more for new teachers, and have a FFA.org login already, don't create a new one. Find that previous one, and then we'll link it to your chapter. So this document that I'm holding up here is in the folder for this specific workshop. I'm not sure if y'all have access to that yet or if it's through the website. Joining FFA is another section on here. There's requirements. I linked the requirements for national and the Washington State's requirements. If you're not familiar with that, have to be enrolled in an agriculture education course, taught by a certified teacher, and pay your dues, whether you do that through affiliation or students pay those dues. Logging in, there is a new login system, so don't have a lot of information on that. It just changed last week. Your login, if you previously logged in to FFA.org, should remain the same, but you will have the option to link it to social media. And so that's going to be, let me show you what that looks like. I need two screens so I can see the online people. Right. Zoom, I'm going to share screen real quick. Get a thumbs up. Jacqueline, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the screen? Thank you. All right, so login screen looks like this now, which looks probably different than you're familiar with. This is a new update as of last week. So you can still log in with your old way. Sorry, touch screen. But you can also connect it with Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or if you have AET. And so students will be able to log in through that as well. So it's one of their goals with this is to help eliminate the duplicate accounts that we have with students. Like maybe they switch schools or they take a different teacher or, whatever those duplicate accounts are happening, trying to streamline that to prevent that. But if you end up having a member that does have multiple accounts, we can merge those accounts together, especially if they come from another chapter, they come from out of state. I've done that a couple of times already this year. You just need to let me know where that student was previously, the chapter location, their name, and then I can go in the system and find those two and merge them together. So if that happens, if you have a student that comes from another area, we can merge those accounts if they end up creating duplicate accounts. All right, so I'm going to stop screen share.
So Jason, if I understood you right, we can go straight to that from AET?
That was through FFA.org, and I went to the dashboard, and I chose state staff. You would choose teacher advisors. Your students would choose the student, but that's the new login screen. But I think their AET login will be able to access them to the FFA.org as well, is the goal.
Okay.
And I put some links on there about how to link the AET or Google or LinkedIn or Facebook to your existing FFA.org account. There's information on that as well. So for you advisors, but also previous members, they can link their existing account to one of those other login methods. Does that make sense? One thing is for membership, making sure when you enter those members, whatever format you do, you can do it and you can download the template that's there and input that and upload it and automatically does it. You can enter each member individually. Previous members, you can just go in and hit renew membership for 1 year. Make sure you hit submit to state, because you just putting them in just sits them at the local level. You have to click all of those students and then hit submit to state, which then sends me a notification that you have submitted a roster to state. At that point, I go through and make sure you click the 1 year, not the AGED only, things like that, and then verify that information is correct. And then I submit the nationals. That's when the invoicing process happens and I invoice you for your membership. Now, when you submit that to state, it creates a membership batch. You can, and y'all communicate with me as well, but can you utilize that membership batch, which shows members and shows price, with your financing person to use as an invoice to get the process of processing that membership payment quicker? That's my question, is can that be used to help facilitate the invoicing and payment process? Because I know some systems don't process checks but once a month. It takes 30 days to get things paid. So do you know if that membership batch has all the members listed, has what the price is? It doesn't have the word invoice on it. All I do is just edit the PDF and put invoice on it when I attach it to your QuickBooks invoice. What's the feedback on that?
Sure, ours has to say invoice.
Okay.
Yeah, ours, if it doesn't say invoice on it, they won't process.
Okay.
Yes. If you can make it say that, we'll do it.
I will call National FFA, be like, look, can you just put this word on there, please?
That's all it needs, actually, it's just that one.
I know,
Yeah,
that's
all
the
it
only
needs.
thing, I know, and it would make it so much easier, but that's above my pay grade, I guess.
But also, it's probably different for affiliate chapters as well.
Yeah, because that's linked to your membership from last year, which falls in that category. But I was just thinking if it could, somebody in the chat said you can start your requisition through the batch. It gets paid with the invoice. Ours will process as long as it does not say wait for the invoice. Okay, so just something to consider and think about. If you can use that membership batch to go ahead and get that process started, there'll be times periodically that I will, focus on updating membership and sending invoices out. But for you, if you want to go ahead and knock that off your to-do list, if that membership batch can help, I can also put together a form that shows you how to edit that membership batch and put the word invoice on it through a PDF editor, if that would be beneficial. Just trying to help expedite the process and make it a little bit more efficient. You can print those membership batch details. I put a link on there on showing you how to do that. And then the new thing for this year would be the chapter data verification. So this is gonna be new for everybody. I put a link on this sheet for required data. And so the only thing that is changing that I want you to input, if I find the right email. So I am asking for on the student member that in the past, I don't think it's been required, but that you identify their location, rural, city, suburb, town, I think are the 4 options for that. And I have an idea to help you facilitate that at your local level that I will recommend. As far as your teacher and advisor program profile, there's no changes. It's just mainly updating, making sure that information is correct. And then for your profile tab, verifying that data that's in there for your chapter profile, and then the billing contact. Who is that finance person? So I can go to there and make sure QuickBooks information is updated with who your person is at your school. So my request would also be, if that person changes throughout the year, try to help facilitate that update so the invoices are getting, that's just another log jam that happened in processing invoices is in QuickBooks, which I inherited, contacts were in there, but people changed. And so when I sent those invoices, it didn't go to the person that needed to go to, or it's a teacher that's not even in the system anymore. And so helping me to update that would be beneficial and help get those invoices to the right person so it can be processed quicker. So that's going to be different when you go in and submit your first set of rosters this year. It's going to ask, it's probably not going to let you submit it, give you a little red bar across the top because you need to go in and verify your data. I will put together a handout that kind of walks you through how to verify that and what that looks like. It's also linked on here is what the required data looks like to help facilitate that. But it shouldn't be too cumbersome, but it's to help us get accurate information as well, especially with communicating. Next, I put in the drive, and I talked about this. Two files there, but it's gone. Interesting.
You're not hold on for this? No?
You on Zoom had a question?
Do you want me?
The baby has a question. What are you doing, Mom? Application example. I talked about this in the FFA management. I used this when I was teaching. It was a form that had all those fields that you need to know to put into the membership roster on that application that the student would fill out and turn back into you. Kept them filed in the notebook. Chapter secretary was responsible for helping keep that organized. Had a folder in my classroom where they could drop it off as they were leaving. And use that. And also on the bottom has a photography and videography release form, because that was something that was beneficial. So I had that verification, and as that chapter secretary was processing it, they could denote this person can't be in pictures, because there were some situations where members cannot be in pictures or photography or videos. So I'll share that resource in the Google Drive as well for you to modify and edit as needed. But and then that chapter secretary also would input that into a master spreadsheet also. Before we transition to POA, any questions on roster? No worries, Sarah. The baby's name was Chloe that was talking to us. She said, sorry, my phone was in my pocket and it's unmuted. Meet Chloe. We're glad Chloe's here. Any questions on roster?
Not really a question, but
Sure.
people in here use AET. So if you go through and get your kids the first couple of weeks of school in your classes, have them fill out their profile, it automatically uploads everything.
Yep.
That's really slick.
Just make sure they put real information in. Sometimes they think, well, I don't want anybody to know
Yes.
my information.
Yep.
I put crazy information in, you can double check.
Another thing that I found, make sure they use proper capitalization,
Yes.
especially in their addresses, because you know they like to use text lingo, and so I'd be like, no, because they had mine. I had a sheet like for AET, and I can share that resource too. It was a 3-page guide that walked them through setting up their profile, and they had to input their SAE hours, that kind of thing. So I can share that resource as well, because we did AET updates every Friday in class. We had a mobile card that would go around, and so every Friday they had to update their AET and put in their journal what they did for their SAE that week. And they had to say, I didn't do anything for my SAE this week if they didn't do anything to input that. And that was kind of, and then you can print that out at the end as well. But that would, just from my experience too, make sure they input it correctly, you know, spelling and capitalization, so that when it does merge with the national roster, because the national FFA, if you've gone in and you start typing addresses, it populates an address based on the database that they're pulling that information from. And so that's another thing. When you're entering addresses, if you do it that way in the roster system, let the address auto-populate and click whatever pops up that matches what that address is, and then it should fill out the city and zip code. It may fill out the city and zip code, even for zip code, but they have that system in there built where it is matched with proper addresses through the postal service system, I guess is where they're pulling that from.
Is there anything special we have to do to make the AET and the roster communicate? It just does it?
I'm not sure on that. I can ask that question.
So if you go in on the teacher side on AET, you can actually go in and click, you know, whatever kid is actually an FFA. And then all you do is there's a button that says, I think, submit to nationals or something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because that's Tammy does our AET and I do our
Yeah,
roster. So we need to get that.
There was-
It does take like 30 minutes for it to show up, so if you go like.
It's like do it one day and then check the next
Yeah,
day?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's easy to use. If I can figure it out, anybody else can.
So sorry, we couldn't find you originally, we didn't know there was a student secret room stuff.
I didn't either. I came early and found it during the Irish Science Fairway. Yeah.
So have you talked about POAs, and if so?
I have not talked about
Okay,
POAs yet.
so are you talking about that?
Yeah, that's next. Yep.
But-
Any other roster questions?
Are you gonna share that AET form that?
I
you
can,
see
yeah.
in the-
Please do.
Okay.
I can share lots of my teaching resources. I miss teaching. And that was something that some of the North Carolina teachers put together. So you'll have to modify and adjust it, but it's a 4-page and it was part of their grade and it was just sequential. Set up your profile, then you go set up, pick what your SAE is, make sure you fill out those descriptions on it, and then journal entries, all that. So yeah, I can definitely share that. Any questions on Zoom about roster before we move to POA? All right. So POA form, as I mentioned previously, if you've been in some of the other things that I've talked, the form is changing. OSPI has a uniform form for all CTSOs across the board. It's going to look very similar to what FFA's is. I think that's where they pulled most of it from. But this is page 1, basically giving a description of what the CTSO is. You would input your school district, zip codes, your program area of focus, who the instructors are, what school year. And then you can see the 15 categories down here for growing leaders, building communities. It's shown at the Zoom, and strengthening agriculture. Then page 2 right now, the one that you'll access has state level events, because it says national or state events. So this is where we'll put events that are kind of recycling every year, Evergreen Tour, Dot and Well, those type things. Column 1, and I'll show the people behind me too, is what the name of that event is. Column 2 is the program component. So that's a drop-down menu in the Word document that you would pick. Growing leaders, leadership, growing leaders, whatever category it is in those 15 areas, drop-down menu. The third column is description. You see the box is very small to enter that, just a short description of that event. Who and when. Our POAs, have a budget column, all that was decided that to make it universal across all CTSOs, they didn't need that budget component. And then the last column is what focused 21st century leadership skill is addressed in this event. And that's a drop-down menu as well, where you just click it and pick which one applies to that. They'll spend a lot of time on
Pick one, or is there multiple ones you pick from?
It'll only pick one. Yeah, so I would just pick one that applies the best, I guess. It does not have the option to pick 2 and how it was formatted, because OSPI took all of our ideas and created the default template across all CTSOs. Then the third page would be where you put your local events. Same setup with the 5 columns, drop-down menus are in there, and this can extend, you can add rows, it can extend beyond it. Now, a question that I'm going to follow up with that was asked is those that do their POAs through AET, does this information have to be transposed to this? So I'm going to follow up with Denny, because Denny is who you submit your POAs to see what the expectation is going to be for that. Checking Zoom real quick.
I'd be surprised if he doesn't take AET, because that's more inclusive than this.
Yeah, I just don't know what the expectation from OSPI is going to be as far as documentation that he needs to have on file, since this is universal across all CTSOs, but definitely not wanting, and we tried to talk about how we pretty much have a system already in place for this, but I think other CTSOs did not have a system in place for this, and that's where the uniformity came from.
Will those drop-down menus work if you end up opening them in Google Docs?
They should. The answer is they
They
should.
don't. Download it as a Word
Like I
document.
said, I'm pretty sure I can dig up a computer that has Word, that our district is getting further away from
Really?
Microsoft, unfortunately.
Wow.
And I say that unfortunately, I hate.
What word processing
Google,
are you using? What word processing software are you using?
Google Docs.
Just Google Docs.
Which is pretty limited.
Yeah.
I will look
Google
then.
can open Word files, but all those,
All the trend and
all that.
It doesn't keep the formatting, yeah. I'll look into then creating a Google Docs version to see if we can maintain that drop-down menu in it. Because when we were at Leavenworth for Cornerstone training, that was the issue. The officers, I sent it to them and they were supposed to type it up. Some of them didn't have Word on the computer, and so they brought it in the Google Docs. So let's make a Docs version
For the POA.
of the POA.
So one thing that we do all the Google Docs too. And for kids that want to do resume stuff and formatting doesn't always mesh up, we just buy ag department laptops and have them put, office user on there. So they don't use, for those certain things, they don't use Chromebooks.
Okay, any other questions? So I was checking the chat. They're still talking about roster template and where you find the template. So I'll try to see if the docs version of that will maintain the format, the drop downs. Any other questions on POA?
Oh, I just wanted to know if we could use the AET.
AET,
Last year I
yeah.
sent that to Benny and he said, well, I'll take it this time, but it'll flush time, which made me very sad.
How many in the room use AET to develop your POA? Okay.
I stopped using it last year when Denny said he wasn't gonna accept that version.
Yeah.
I just used his version and didn't go through AET to create our POA.
Well, then since y'all have shared that he's already said that, I would say that this is probably the form that's gonna have to be submitted. That sucks. I've been in your shoes. So why reinvent the wheel and have to do it twice, but.
You can make a change. You can.
Stay
strong.
That explains too, though, with what has just been shared, that maybe that's some context for national chapter as well, because that's something I was shocked coming into this position from my experience in North Carolina, is the national chapter award program is not as big of a focus that I've seen, which links right with your POA, which was odd to me because in North Carolina, we don't have to submit a POA to the state level. But national chapter is, one of the top awards you want to get at state convention. You want to be that top chapter that gets recognized on stage through the national chapter award program. So I thought that was odd because you have to submit a POA, and I'm like, oh, you're already doing the beginning work for it. So was curious about that. I will take that to the CTSO group, but I think from what you shared with Denny, we'll probably have to stick with the form that's being mandated from OSPI. Yep, for now, till we have an assessment of how did this form work, and then I can say, well, it doesn't work for ag ed. So
is that well, it's not obviously not a complete redo of the old one, but is that super new?
yes, and this is already on our website. I put it under the tab for starting a new chapter. So that those that are trying to start would already have this new one. I'll put it on the other areas under the advisors resources tab and all. But yeah, this came out and was to be used for the 21-22 school year.
Daryl asked me if that links up to the Building Our American Community program. I knew it. This TRS 80 doesn't link.
Other questions? It seems like roster is a definitely top topic or priority that maybe I can help facilitate some workshops on to help do that, especially merging AET and all that. So I'll put that on the list. If you can, on that feedback survey, if you'll add that in there as well, because I'm gonna use that to kind of prioritize what topics are showing up in that feedback form to tackle what the top topics are.
Yeah.
Jennifer said half the people in the room don't even know what the BOAC award is.
The young guys don't even know what.
That's why I said.
North Carolina tried to bring it back.
Really?
They did, like Building Our Communities in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still doing it, but they tried to bring that back a few years. Other questions? Thoughts, concerns on roster and POA?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Anything you can do to ease the paperwork trail is yay for us.
Okay.
Never you're hired for your expertise when we bring you to the game.
Right. Some of the feedback too from the other areas was like recruitment ideas and POA ideas. So I'll try to put a resource page on the website for that as well to pull. I do encourage you to go to National FFA and pull that and look at the model of excellence and models of innovations for those type of events to get ideas. well, let me say that. Send your officers to those websites to find those resources, to look for those ideas, not you, because you will not have the time to facilitate and navigate that. So that's something else I'd like to maybe look at is some chapter officer development training in regards to POA and National Chapter Award, that kind of thing, because I know from experience, it's a beast of an application to put together if it's just you doing it. So did I do that in my beginning years? Yes. In my latter years, did I? No. If they didn't get it done, it just didn't get submitted because it had to be their work that they were doing. So any questions on Zoom? Thank y'all for being here on Zoom. Have a great day. Thank y'all.
Yes, thank you.
Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
I know.